Good morning. It is 10 o'clock, Tuesday, February the 16th, 2021, and I call our meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Ms. Hewlett?
Here.
Ms. Perkins?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Ms. Carr?
Here.
Ms. Tynes?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we need approval of agenda or amendments.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. It has been seconded. Vote, please.
Yes.
Ms. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Carr?
Yes.
Ms. Tynes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, again, I want to welcome everyone to our school board meeting. This is our school board budget work session, and at this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Tynes, our vice chair, to lead us in the pledge and the moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, we have one item on the agenda for discussion, but it's a big one. So we are going to ask Dr. Thornton to begin our discussion with our proposed operational budget. Dr. Thornton.
Dr. Thornton, before you do that, I have something I would like to say. I don't know if Mr. Wilson and Mrs. Hewlett would like to join me as well. Last evening, there was a posting from Mrs. Briggs from the virtual students of Westside High School, thanking us for being their board members. And I would like to thank all of the virtual students for being there, hanging in there for a year. And hopefully you won't have to be there much longer. We'll be able to get you back to normalcy. Thank you very much. And this was also from Westside Elementary School, and we would like to thank them for our little package.
I second that.
Thank you.
Very good. So, Madam Chair and board members, traditionally what we do is have our Executive Director of Finance kind of go page for page and let you ask questions from each page, answer those, and then if any of the team needs to elaborate on those discussions, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
You don't need to hear me present again. So, Steve, you're in the hot seat.
Oh, this isn't the hot seat?
No, standing at the mic, yes. All right, if we can just start with page 2 and then kind of go through.
So the 164, 591, that is the total expenditures. That is going to be compensated by the state, correct? The difference? And the federal government through CARES or?
That's correct. I mean, if you look at the very top revenue, the very first line, Thank you. Commonwealth of Virginia, you'll see the 1,300,000 increase, which is what we are proposed to receive from the state. As a reminder, come December, January, when they take a second look at our membership, our enrollment, they will typically revise. So as of this point in time, yes, we're looking to receive $1.3 million more than we're receiving in this current year. But in those other revenue areas, it's lessening that increase. You'll see the $9,000 from the county. That's ultimately the textbook funds that the state says we need a local share, less. The federal, $493,000, that's, most of that is your federal grants. And then lastly, fees and other revenue sources of $657, which are, some of that is your local revenue, whether it's a tuition amount or other grants, federal funds that we receive. So the net, yes, is $164,000 increase in total.
So with this budget, we'd be asking for no additional funds from the county.
That's exactly correct. In fact, in total, we're asking for 9,000 less from the county. There's two funds. There's the general fund that we're asking for the exact same amount, and then there's the textbook fund that we're asking that $9,000 less.
Okay.
Were there any other questions on that first revenue page, or all funds? That gets complicated because to say all funds, it's grants, it's all of our it's food service, it's our general operating, so it's all mixed into that large number.
Right, so if you look at page 3, which is the general fund, there you're looking more at the state, the county government, and that's the operational budget that we count on. So there, that doesn't have all of that CARES money in there.
Grants.
And others. So we kind of look at the general fund as how we need to operate, because the majority of our funds come from the state and local government. So you can see there, the revenue is up almost $900,000, and that's generated from the state increase. So a good state increase, which we were looking at anyways, if you can remember that far back when the governor first introduced this before the pandemic. We had one of the best budgets for quite a while, and doing that loss of funds has kept us in that, it's not as high as we were going to be, but it has kept us in there, so that's a very good thing.
The hold harmless, is that for 2 years or just this year?
It's for this year that we're in, so he added money in this year, so we're not gonna see that deficit, and next year.
Okay, but not, we don't know about the year
Not the
after.
year, right. The year after actually is a new biennium.
So we would have to wait
Right,
and
so
see.
that would be a brand new,
Got it.
okay.
I'm just looking at page 3. I don't know what jumps out at you, but under that revenue, you'll see the federal category. If you notice in the center, that revised budget of the current year is $775,000, and it drops to $245,000.
That's CARES.
That's CARES, exactly. That's the county CARES that they received and then gave to us an even $540,000.
Which we appreciate very greatly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
But the assumption is we won't get that next year.
Right,
Right.
that's, I noticed
It'll
that.
be back to the 200 and
Exactly.
Right.
And that jumps out, that's a glaring change, yes.
And those, it is confusing, so those federal dollars, because they run through the state and then through the local government to us, are in your general funds, where the rest of the CARES money is not.
Right, no, I understand.
So that can be confusing sometimes.
Hold on. Best way to do this.
Uh-huh.
Are we on page 4 now, or are we still on page 3?
Wherever you're ready to be.
I was just looking at 3, but we can go to page 4, which is your,
I didn't want to like push too hard, like if someone has questions on 3, I didn't want to be the only one. So I have questions on 4.
okay, yep, page 4.
On page 4, the hospital medical plans line is down 8.6%. I was just wondering why.
Okay. I'll be honest with you on that one. We're hedging our bets. That number is an automatically generated number. So when I assign an employee's salary into our projections for next year, all of our employees, they are also assigned a health medical plan. And that, then the software ultimately adds up all those medical plans and drops them into this.
Okay.
Secondly, though, I'm comfortable with the decrease because, as a reminder, this is a nice kind of segue into our health benefit changes that we're asking the board to take action in March. We are hoping to have a significant decrease in healthcare costs with these changes, potentially to the tune of, depending on our claims, how sick our people get, to the tune of $1 million. So I think, one, this is a nice opportunity. We're decreasing our spending, but then secondly, it should certainly fit within our health fund needs and our payments in doctor's claims.
And that's the switching over to Anthem from our current plan,
It would be
correct?
to Anthem, yes,
Yes.
where we can afford to live within these means,
Okay.
yes.
So I think Steve took a reasonable approach here, because if you remember, at the last meeting, the costs that we're gonna save, that are guaranteed cost savings by going to Anthem, are administrative fees, and those were around $500,000.
Okay.
Now, the rest is all based on claims, so we really can't assume that that is gonna happen. And there's a lot of speculation with the pandemic, well, the people didn't go to the hospital, and now they're gonna go as soon as they feel healthy. So we're being very cautious with, as far as the claim situation.
Right.
Okay.
So then that goes to my next question, the sick leave payout for the retirement. I'm seeing that down 33.3%. Is that because we had a lot of people retire and we don't have a lot of people eligible for retirement anymore? or-
No, it's not as clear as that. That would be a wonderful response for me to be able to give to you.
Okay.
I can't answer it that definitively.
All right, so what is the response?
So but it's a good assumption. It's just not that clear. That payment is very simple. It's when our people retire, if they have unused sick time, there's a payment on their retirement.
Right.
So what I did, sometimes we don't necessarily know where the numbers should land. So I looked at prior years, and I unilaterally feel comfortable dropping that by the $20,000.
Okay.
We just hadn't spent 60. So call it arbitrary. Again, we're hedging our bets, but over historic trends, I think the 40,000 would be sufficient.
So I know that we had a lot of people retiring with the pandemic last year and then this year. Actually, I've seen a bunch mid-year this year as well. And so you're still not seeing these numbers with the larger amounts retiring. Is that correct?
I wasn't, that's right.
Okay.
But let me point out another line, the next line right below it, the ERIP.
Yeah, I noticed that went up.
Those don't
dramatically.
really go together, but I'm able to transfer between them. And you'll notice on that ERIP has a significant increase. Because again, historic trends, let me start with this year. I think we're gonna be short in your budgeted amount for this year. Because when I looked, we've almost already hit the amount that we budgeted for this whole year. We've already just about hit that amount as of today. So I will, and my next project, and I'm still new, my next project, once I get through this budget process, is to realign your budget, because we had payroll changes. We have now revenue changes from the state. So there's a lot of work to realign your budget. There might be a recommendation to amend your budget. I have to talk to Dr. Thornton. I'm nowhere near that yet.
Right.
But that's my next big project. So I'll be transferring into your ERIP, but I did feel we do need to budget significantly more in ERIP for next year. And that, along with the other line, I can transfer between those if need be.
Now, I saw that the substitutes was down because we're having trouble getting substitutes. Is that where you'd be transferring the money from the extra money in the substitute category to the ERIP? Because we're using them as substitutes, is that correct?
That's a nice combination, but you don't necessarily have to. This, the way the state rules are in terms of your auditing, and I tried to show it by page. This page, if you notice top left, at the top of the column, says instructional services. So I can transfer, but only within instructional services. On the
Right.
next page, administration, I can't transfer from administration into instructional services. I have to
Not-
keep it within a function.
Well, without
So
that
if
permission.
it's a payroll to a payroll, yes, that would be ideal, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Okay.
And then I noticed the workers' comp went up 20,000.
Yes,
That's above the retiree health care credit?
that's correct. And that, what I did, I looked at how much we spent this year, and then I did, based on their recommendation, one is, yes, our payment to our workers' comp insurance carrier, but secondly, that also gets pulled from payroll. If you remember, the benefits, that's why I thought it was important that you see that benefit screen on the slide presentation. There's many categories. There's pension categories, there's health benefit. Health benefit is your biggest one, obviously, but then there's the workers' comp piece. And as an employer, we're required to not only budget, but then pay based on a number of employees. So every time I put an employee in, there's a percentage of salary that the employer is required to pay towards workers' comp. So that number also partly is automatically generated based on your employees.
I have a question.
Yes.
Previous years, when I say previous years, I guess about 7, 8 years ago, with the with our self-health medical plan, what happened, I don't know what happened one year, we had a lot of people to go out and have surgical procedures, medical procedures, and sort of put that category a little short. I'm thinking that because of the pandemic we've been in, and a lot of those type of surgeries were put on the back burner medically, the only way you could get it if it was an emergency, you could have surgeries. Once everything comes back to normalcy, there's a possibility we could have employees that put those surgeries on the back burner, may come out and say, oh, I'm gonna have it now, everything's back. I was hoping that, I wanna make sure that we can, I know we can't see in the future, but anticipate maybe that happening and not run short again.
Correct. So I'm thinking of this, and there's no magic cure, no pun intended.
Right.
When you're self-insured, there's no magic cure for that scenario
Right.
if we're underfunded.
Right,
But there's 3 ways to mitigate or avoid the problem. Because you're right, if we're putting money in our health fund, every month we do, to pay the claims, and suddenly the claims skyrocket, God forbid people have terrible illnesses, we have to pay those claims. So first, it's my responsibility to make sure that we have reserves in there. That's why I keep pointing out to you, we have over $1 million reserves. But in health, that can go very quickly. So what I will be doing as I realign the budget, we will have unspent areas, I keep saying it, field trips and substitute costs. Field trips and substitute costs. So what I will be doing, Dr. Thornton's help, is moving money into that health fund for that reason, for the rainy day. And then secondly, this is a big decision, but I think it's needed to shop your insurance, which we're doing, to try to lower our costs. So that helps. Lastly, God forbid, we do exceed a level, we have our stop-loss insurance. There's 2 kinds of stop-loss insurance. There's the individual, so if someone requires costs that exceed $125,000, the stop-loss insurance will carry it from there.
all right.
And collectively, once as a division, our health fund has paid, it's 4 point something, over $4 million aggregate. They call it the aggregate. There's the individual and there's the aggregate. Then the stop loss will take it from there. So those are those relief valves that hopefully we never get to that.
Okay,
But there are fail-safes, but at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to make sure that health fund is self-sufficient. That's why it's important when you go self-funded that you have people assisting who know this business to ensure, I'm from New Jersey. We looked at that, and the people said, you guys, you're not big enough. So the larger the division, the more likely you can support, because when you talk about people who don't need as much medical compared to people who do, the larger the numbers, the more is in your favor.
that's true.
So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
The staff development contracts are down 50% roughly, 49%. It was 103 and now it's at 52.
Right.
So what is going on with that specifically?
All right.
I actually know that one, Steve.
That's fine, go ahead.
So you see it was previously 62, and then revised, went up to 103. That is some of the COVID money that we did spend, that was given to us,
Okay.
that we could do stipends and other things with, so that we don't foresee that, so that's why it's gone down.
Okay.
In addition, I did want to point out, you'll see the staff development contracts line on your far left. If you look several lines just below that travel and training, you'll see that went up. So those lines have a similar need. So I did increase the travel training while reducing, in addition to Dr. Thornton's additional funds that we put in there.
The books and subscriptions went up 398%. Was that because of virtual learning and the subscriptions they had? And we foresee keeping those subscriptions going forward, or,
Hold on.
I mean, it's not a huge amount.
Right.
It's just a large percentage increase.
Not sure what that line is. Do you know, Susan, or Mike?
I'm not sure what that line is specifically.
You mean the $300?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's 300, yeah, and it went up 390. It just looks, it just stands out because of the.
Well, again, what I did was, I wish this were as zero base as I would like it to be. That one, I did base it on prior year's spending.
Okay.
So if you notice, back in the FY20, the first column, we did spend $275. So erring on the side of caution in that your revised budget of $60 wouldn't be enough. So I did put in an even $300.
300,
Okay.
okay.
And the field trip, going from 101 to 10, we're just going back to the way things were before we paid for all field trips?
Yes, ma'am. So we still will not exclude any student for financial reasons. We'll still be able to do that. But yes, going back to that time and foreseeing, we're still not going to be completely out of the pandemic. We're
Right.
probably still not going to be doing that level. So we can revisit that in the following year budget.
Okay.
That's it.
I'm ready to go to the next page.
Me too.
Good. Good.
The thing about this page, and I think we discussed it a couple years ago, to me, it would be a help if we separated the admin from nurses and psychologists and technical salaries and clerical. It's just like that's all in one. It would just help if because I don't see a nurse in this category. I don't see some
Well-
of that's listed here in this. And we talked about it a few years ago, but we've never done anything about it.
Let me point something out. If you look at the description words, 2, 3, 4, on the fifth one down, you will see it
Nurse.
itemized.
School nurse salaries. is
Correct.
there. And they also they have nurse assistant.
I don't know if you would want more than that, like number of nurses per se.
No, I just see where this is, we're looking at operating budget details, and it just seems like there would be as much money as we put in admin, and, I mean, we separate operations and maintenance, we separate the technology. I was just thinking, is there any reason why we can't separate admin? And nurses are in the schools. I don't know, it's just when I look at that, it was just, we talked about it a few years ago.
Nurses are,
This is actually based on the state.
right.
And so we're
Okay.
required, when we submit all of our state reports, it's administration, attendance, and health. So even
So
like
it's the way the
Colleen
state
Loud-
sets it up?
Right.
Yeah, these
Okay.
are state
Right,
determined, they
right.
call them functions, yes.
Okay,
And at the end of the day, whether it's grants or whether it's this budget, when we send a letter to the Board of Supervisors approving it, we only give those, I think it's the 6 main functions.
Okay.
Instruction, this category, transportation, debt service, operations, food service.
That's where they say they've always put them because they don't consider them instructional. So they put them with
With
the
admin.
administrators,
Right, and there's only the administrative salaries.
Right.
There's only a
A
few salaries in
few
there.
salaries in there.
Most of them are in instruction,
Right.
and then, like, Chris will be in transportation
Right.
and maintenance. So it's just the requirements of the state and how we
Okay.
have to report it.
The psychologist salaries, did we get a new one that was a lower cost than the prior one, maybe less
Well,
experience?
that's exactly it.
Okay.
Answer is yes. That's 3 folks. And last year, I believe it was Miss Gregg, did retire and was replaced with
Some with less.
a fraction of the salary.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And the others did go up slightly, but that's why you're not seeing that decrease being a full salary. It's 2 went up and 1 went down.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That was just more of a general question. Now, the, food purchases, I see that it's down, by the 58.1%. And again, it's not a huge amount of money. Did that have anything to do with the money we were getting from the federal government?
No, that was, again, your historic trends. In the prior years, we just weren't spending, the revised budget, you'll see a 4,300, we hadn't been spending that. So I just arbitrarily, if you want to call it that, put an even 2,500 to match what we had done in the past.
All right.
Are you ready to go? Next page?
Transportation.
So in this one, the administrator salaries, it says up 61.1%. I was just wondering what was going on with that.
Mr. Coleman
Oh, I don't want to call anyone out.
confused me in the budget. I'll explain. I'm not calling anybody out. I wouldn't do that. Mr. Coleman is all over the division. There was a day where he was only in the operations maintenance area. When we initially budgeted, I was advised by my staff that his salary was allocated or divided up over 4 different functions. Because we'll go into the schools, call it instruction. He does transportation, he does everything. Then we did change that to only reallocating to transportation and maintenance.
Okay.
So in that number, we're looking at transportation now, half of his salary is in there in addition to Lee's salary.
Okay.
Okay, that's,
I
okay.
do
In
bel-
addition to what?
Lee's salary.
Oh,
Right,
okay,
yes.
okay.
I do believe last year it was only Lee's salary. So we simply allocated Mr. Coleman's salary.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, that was my question on the next page too, because I was trying to figure out what was going on. I spotted you.
And on the next page, since we're talking, at the very top line, that also includes the project, the new position that we spoke about.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that's not the full salary. That's because Mr. Coleman's salary is only half in here.
Right.
And that's why you're not seeing a full increase on the operations and maintenance. So,
Now, I'm seeing the hospital medical plans go down again.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a consistent trend. Are you just, but I do agree with Denise. I think people are putting stuff off. We're not gonna get caught with our, get caught where we're stuck because 4-point-something million is a lot of money. And if you have, 1 million is 10 people with over 125, you have over $1 million.
right. So, since that's a good concern, can I skip a couple pages and jump to the health fund budget? And we can talk about that.
Absolutely.
We can, yeah, sorry, I don't mean
It's
to be jumping
it's a
all over.
legitimate concern.
What page were you talking?
So it's its own tab, health fund,
I have notes on this one too.
Okay, gotcha.
okay? So let's look at that.
It was helpful with the tabs, I will say, to jump
Yeah.
around.
Yes.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Very helpful.
So, and let's start by looking at your most recent completed year, because this year is still up in the air. So I'm going to go to the far left column, FY 2020, the actuals. All right? So we moved in, I'm going to go category by category. 4,000,007, the transfer from the operating budget. So that was the board's share of how much money we put into the fund. So we had budgeted based on a family plan, a single plan. And each month, we would put money into the fund. Over the full year, we put 4.7 million. The employees also contribute out of their own pay. That's not from your budget, that's from their pay. So if an employee's getting 60,000, maybe 1,500, they put into the health fund. So that's the employee's share. And then Cobra folks So we receive it, we drop it into the health fund, and then we pay the bills on their behalf. So we brought in 6.3 million. But the question is, how much did we have to pay out in claims and in administrative fees? Because we don't just pay the doctors, we also pay these entities to run the show behind the scenes for us, and we pay our stop-loss insurance, which is significant in cost. So the total cost was 5.8. So I'm gonna lean on that 5.8 because your concern is claims. What if more people see the doctors? So what if that 5.8 skyrockets? I don't know that administrative fees would go up, but the claims would go up, driving up that 5.8. So now let's move over to what I've budgeted. Now I'm on the third column from the left, FY 2022. So I'm anticipating bringing in 6.1 million. So that satisfies the 5.8. We haven't spent anything yet, so my expenses I'm booking as the same as the 6.1 million. And the only thing I can tell you, and the board certainly has the authority at this point to say, let's budget more for medical. But it's on me to get you to a point of comfort, because if we're changing our health providers and they're going to save us in administrative fees, one, we are budgeting a few $100,000 more than we spent in a completed year, and two, hopefully our costs comes down significantly. That might be offset by people going to the doctors. So I don't have a great answer other than there is risk in this budget.
Yes.
Right.
There's
Always is.
absolute risk in this budget. And I don't know that that's a bad thing, because you don't always want to budget more than you necessarily need. So if it ever came to that, I'm going to say the same thing I said to Ms. Tynes. One, I might have to transfer from an area where we have funds. Where is that? Today, I don't know. I'd have to get going into the year first. Will we have vacancies that we can pull from salaries? Possibly. Secondly, will we exceed the stop loss? So now stop loss will kick in, which sounds good until your stop loss rates go up the following year.
Right.
So it's all flexible.
My trepidation is just that in the past, we have been very short and had to transfer money into that category, which caused, strife within that budget. Now, not while you were, this is prior.
I've heard, and my
And
goal
so
is.
there's just like that, it's in the back of my
And
head.
that's why
as
my
an issue.
goal, this is an interesting year. I don't want to say it's a good year, because COVID is nothing good about COVID. It's an interesting year. From a financial perspective, I plan, and I'm going to be transparent with this, to put money into the fund in places where we've not spent money. Transportation and substitutes, for that exact reason. So not only you'll see decreases, but I believe that with the financial status that we're at in this year's budget, we should be able to offset those decreases and get the health fund to a point where everybody's comfortable.
And there is padding, because doesn't it roll over, the monies we don't use, they roll over into the next year, correct?
In which fund?
In healthcare.
Healthcare.
Yeah, in the health fund,
No,
yes.
I'm only talking about healthcare right now.
Yes, yes, that's why you'll see on the far left, the very top line says 176,000. That, to me, that's concerningly low, right?
It is
Right, that's-
concerningly low, yeah.
That's what my
I'm
worry
not
is.
pointing a finger at anybody, but, I mean, and down at the bottom, it increased over that year.
We added more money, I think, that year
Well, we
to
put
it.
more money, I don't know if it was intentionally, but the monies that we budgeted versus the claims we paid out were less, so we generated that. I don't know that we intentionally deposited money,
I think we did that year.
possibly.
I think we requested money from the
We
Board of
we
Supervisors.
did,
unintentionally.
with carryover money, we added to it.
Yeah,
So,
I know
because
we
we got
added
too
additional
low.
money.
That's why we're trying to stay, and with the consultants you work with too, we feel comfortable with trying to keep that $1 million in reserve. If you're between 500,000 and $1 million reserve at the end of the year, I'm gonna feel very comfortable of rolling that over. And if that gets built up, I don't think, until that gets built up, well over $1 million at this time of the year, then we might be looking at coming to you and saying, look, we're actually gonna do a reduction in what we charge our employees. But until then, no. And if you really look at those numbers of what we pay as an employer and what they pay, it's a huge amount of money that we pay for everyone's health insurance. And so we do a good job in our benefits. We really do. And I don't think anyone any employee of any company or school, everyone complains about their benefits.
Yeah.
It's just a natural thing, but I think moving to Anthem is going to be a good thing.
I think so.
I wasn't really complaining about that. I just wanted us to be on top of it
Right.
because I know coming out of this pandemic, bam,
Right.
all of these
And
electives.
it'll likely happen.
Right.
Yes.
But I think what the total funds available is beyond
Okay.
your stop loss, so that protects the reserve.
Do you know what the rollover at this point roughly is? Like, if we were to roll over right this second, do you know roughly what that number is?
Yes, I would just, the only number I could tell you is the number that I shared at the board meeting.
Sorry, refresh me. There's a lot
No,
of
no,
numbers at a
hold
board
on,
meeting.
I might have it. Which, yeah, closing out January was $1,127,000.
Right.
So at this point, that would be the rollover, if we were to roll over right now. Okay, that makes me feel better.
The
but
term
who's to
is
say?
IBNR, incurred but not reported, IBNR.
Yes, I'm familiar.
IBNR, incurred, we incurred the expense, someone went to the doctor yesterday, but not reported, but the bill hasn't come in yet.
Right, yeah.
And we're always advised that you need 3 months, that could take 3 months for that bill to roll in.
It's like October when you have
Right.
that final number.
So I wouldn't say today we have 1,127,000 because there's likely 3 months of IBNR that will eat away at that.
Okay,
So this is where I need help when we talk to our consultants about where, based on our claims that we've had, based on a theoretical IBNR, how much money should we have as a reserve? And that's where we get some help.
okay, no, but I mean, but that number is much higher than it was a year or two ago at this point. I'm just,
Absolutely, it was.
I mean, I just remember we had very low numbers.
We were month to month paying our bills.
I know, I remember.
About a year and
But
a
it's-
half ago.
Yes.
Been shut down a year, that's why it's so high. But just wait, give them time.
You're right.
As Soon as they get all their little vaccines, they're gonna head back to the doctor.
I've noticed the workers' comp, retiree healthcare credit, that is much higher.
So we're going back to the
We're back
Yep, I'm
to-
sorry, back to,
Page 6.
back to page 6.
page 6, transportation, okay.
So the retiree healthcare credit, and again, it's not a huge amount of money, but the percentage has gone up,
That was from the reallocation,
oh, okay, so that's just a
Yes.
reallocation?
because it ties directly to the salaries that we put in, yes,
All right.
yes.
And then the software, is that the software we put in the new buses? Or what is
Yes.
the tech software online?
Yes,
Okay.
the increase, yes, that was, that was under budgeted. We've moved money in, and I don't think, I'd have to double check that, I don't know that, you see the 41,000? Stand out on a limb, I don't know that we're gonna spend all of that 41,000,
Okay.
unless we did something unique this year, but the typical is that 27,000 for the software,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, that's fine.
That was the GPS.
Page 7.
Page 7. Operations and maintenance.
The security contracts went down 19%. That's the $15,000. I know I have to use this too. I use my paper.
Page 8, we already discussed page 7 before we flip to the medical. Didn't we?
The contract security.
But we discussed that prior to going to medical, page 7, because I put notes on it. And he was telling us the other part of Mr. Coleman's salary was on this as well.
Right, and so I have that as a note on the top with the
Right.
administrator salary, but I'm talking about page 7, the contract security.
I see
That's
that.
going down 19%. I just don't know what that is and why.
I left the budget the same as the original budget for FY '21. I was comfortable with that, and you'll notice the prior year, we barely used that line at all.
Okay,
So again, it was in the name of keeping the budget as zero-based as I could.
that's fine. Now, the materials and supplies went down. I would have thought it would have went up because, at least this year, because of the, with all the stuff we were buying to keep buses clean and wipe them down? And is it just because we were doing less runs, less people?
Well, it's a combination. One, it is that, but two, hopefully that comes back to normal next year. But we will have some COVID funds, significant COVID funds, that we have yet to appropriate. I did, just to get this budget to you, I did arbitrarily put it in, many of the positions are in instruction. Some of the positions are in administrative, but then I dropped a large amount in a miscellaneous instruction area, and 800,000 I did drop in operations. But that's tentative, because once the executive team sits down, it's 2.1 million. So we have to build a true budget based on that, bring it to you for approval, and then have it sent to the Board of Supervisors for their approval as well. So,
Category.
Yeah, I understand.
so it's my assumption that yes, and we have till 2022 to spend that 2.1.
Right.
So I believe some of the.
July 2020.
2023.
Yeah.
Thank you, September 2023. Right, thank you.
Right.
So there's time, and we will likely drop some of that in the significant amount in operations and maintenance, yes.
I was like, time's tight. Okay.
Page 8.
And the additions, the capital additions, furniture, that has a lot to do with CARES as well, correct?
Yes.
Yes, you'll notice, let me look at one of the additions, but two, the furniture line, we spent a lot of money on furniture. You'll look at the 135,000 went up to 739,000.
Right.
Because that was the county, 540,000 came into that. That's where we put it, largely for furniture.
Right.
So, no, I did not budget for furniture.
Right.
Because in theory, we shouldn't need any more furniture. In fact, we might have to pay to get rid of old furniture. I don't know.
So we are, if you remember, I think we added that about 4 years ago to slowly replace furniture
Right.
that has never been replaced. And now we still may buy some more furniture this year for Carsville and Windsor Elementary School. May or may not. So we're looking at that, but we won't need furniture for 20, 30 years.
Oh.
I mean, we're way ahead of the plan because of the coronavirus and the need for, the good thing is, the coronavirus, we needed individual desks. And so we had to go away from our tables and our collaborative work and our teamwork, which mostly happens at elementary. And then, but these tables we bought can fit together. So it serves two purposes. When we get back to normalcy,
They can hook them up.
they can still be used, and we don't have to get rid of them or put them in storage and bring our tables back. So we have a lot of flexibility. So we're going to hold on to those in storage, because who knows what the future holds. So we'll probably get rid of some that are very old. There's some like in Carrollton right now that we'll probably put up for auction and go through the policy.
Where are
But we're
they
in
stored
great
right
shape.
now?
In the warehouse, yeah. That warehouse is packed full and of all kinds of stuff. And I know Mr. Coleman and his team is going through, and we're also looking at, we have files over there, papers. We're going through VDOE to see, all right, you have to hold these financial records for X number of years and these records for X number. But once they rotate, we're labeling them and rotating them out. We have more files than we need to have kept. And they used to be kept down at the transportation hub and all those
Those trailers.
hodgepodge of buildings. So they're much better organized, and I know we're going through a process of eliminating when we can.
But in response to your concern or question, with the 800,000 that I arbitrarily put from those larger care funds, I know I and Mr. Coleman are going to be proponents of spending some of that on HVAC. So it wouldn't surprise me, that although we don't see it in this fund, on this page, that some of those funds, I think, would be spent on additions and improvements for ventilation.
Smithfield High School. No, I said Smithfield High School. When you say HVAC, that comes to mind.
Uh-huh,
It's historical.
okay.
Page 8, you ready for
On
page 8?
page 8, I'm ready.
Well, your debt service is really what it is. I just pull out the sheet and pencil in here whatever next year's payments are. And then technology.
Okay.
There's very little change in technology. The only significant change is the position that we've added through the CARES, Dr. Thornton? Through the CARES?
There's one that we added that's on the general fund,
Right.
and then we are adding an additional one. Did you interview for that yet?
We're checking references right now.
Okay, and that is gonna be paid through the CARES fund,
Okay.
so.
Is that basically for the help desk?
A lot of help needed.
So anything that any position you're adding through the CARES fund, is that a temp
Yes, we're,
Position.
we're looking at it as a
2-year?
two-year
Right,
position.
that's what I'm thinking, right, 2
Right.
year, okay, all right.
You ready to go? Move
Ready.
on?
Huh?
Child nutrition,
Child nutrition.
Where did I miss that one?
page 9.
You're on 9. I have 10 for
No, I'm
child.
sorry,
I'm
it's
on
not child
textbook.
nutrition,
I
we're
have
on textbooks.
textbooks.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
I was like, okay, we're
Okay.
skipping textbooks.
Textbooks.
This is a relatively simple fund to budget. It's your Fund 200. Because on the state memo that we receive when we put in Isle of Wight County School Division, there's two numbers. There's the county, and that's where you'll see the decrease. That's really told to us by the state as the local match, and then the state revenue. So both of which were decreased, which is surprising, but that's what we're getting.
Do they separate technology from textbooks? I mean, because a lot of what we used to use for textbooks is now being used in technology. So is that a reason maybe why textbook funds went down?
I'm not sure why it went down, but it's changed so much over the years. Textbooks used to truly be textbooks, and you had to go through a textbook adoption X number of years,
Right.
and they told you when. Now it's so wide open, you can buy software with it, you can pretty much do anything with that money except fund a position. And so it's very flexible now. And so I think they just wanted to keep it traditionally in that line item. I don't know why.
It
It's
used to
even
be
in that line
textbook
item
would
anymore.
drive your instruction.
Right.
Remember those
Yes,
days?
Yes, absolutely. So that fund is very flexible.
And now if there's some PD that are assisting towards textbooks, certainly tech books apply, so it's much more forgiving.
Right. It's
in
probably
how to
down
spend it.
too, based on, all the funds are tied through your ADM as well.
They're all tied together.
So if they didn't change that formula, it should be down based on our ADM.
It's one of those situations where textbooks and technology, it's gonna be tied together because you can always download textbooks into
Right.
using technology, so it's all together.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Now, when we're looking at art textbooks for 240,000, is that textbook replacement? Or is that new textbooks?
Yes, that would be replacements again, like we do every year, continually replacing. If you don't do that, you're gonna end up in a bad predicament. You continue to replace every year with replenishment.
Does it also include the, don't we have to pay money to keep the small books on the iPads and all that kind of thing for the kids? So that's included in this
That's all
fund?
included.
Okay.
License fee, that's why tech book, you're not saving money. I mean, there's license fees, they're per pupil fee, and they're significant, so. A tech book program is is expensive.
So what textbooks are we actually replacing with the 339?
That's just a placeholder of where we call that, but that's where we'll pay for governor's school.
Dual enrollment.
Dual enrollment.
We always applying for dual enrollment.
Right.
So there's always secondary needs that we may not even know right this second, because the colleges, if they change their textbook, we have to provide it.
Any more questions for this? Okay.
Not for textbooks.
Now we can go to child nutrition.
Child nutrition?
Now, with the federal government giving us so much money to do the lunches that are going out, and us having the Chartwell's program, how does that all, I've been a little confused about how that all works with us. What are we putting in? What's the federal government putting in? And this may not be specific to this budget, but just a general question I had about the budgeting for that and where we go in the future with that, because that federal money will not always be there.
Right, so I can speak to that one. So all the federal government is giving us full reimbursement for every child versus they would just give us for the free students or reduced students. So we're still buying the food through Chartwell's. So we still have the expenditure of the food, we still have the expenditure of our people, but it's basically guaranteeing those meals. And because you're guaranteeing the meals, more kids are eating. So we look more profitable now probably than we ever have. So down the road where it affects us, when they don't pay for everyone, probably our meal revenue will go backwards a little bit. But
The
that's
debt will
what
go
these,
back up.
yeah, so we based it off the traditional numbers
Right.
that we have in the past.
Okay.
So we feel pretty good about that.
It's a big difference in our conversation
Oh,
from 2 years
right.
ago, as far as food, debt, lunch debt or meal debt, to where we are today.
Right. I will say, though, with having Chartwell's, and I think Angie is in her first full year, right? She started late with us. She has done a good job communicating with our team, and she works for Chartwell's, and following the trends and the revenue. And really, without having that large company with their large resources, we may not have been able to feed the children like we did all summer long and continued, because as people had shortages, if we didn't have this big company that had the resources to dial up and send us those meals that they had, the frozen meals, we may not have been able to do what we did. And some other divisions were not able to keep up. So that was a huge benefit. I give kudos to Chartwell's when I can. We're still going to evaluate once we get back and go through a full year with them. I don't think we've gone through really a full year to feel good about, where I could say, you know what, this is a good partnership. But there's definitely some benefits that we have received.
And if I may, this budget here is dependent on how many lunches we sell and how many breakfasts we sell. You can't look at that federal reimbursement number of 1.2 million at the bottom and say, we're going to get that. We don't know what we're going to get. It's dependent on the numbers of sales, because each month they'll count the number of sales, put it into the state system, and if we sell much less, then we're not going to get that money. So the question I have is, what if the sales aren't what we think they'll be, and we lessen the sales, expected sales, because our enrollment's going down? So we don't want to lay off people. We still have to pay Chartwell's their fee. So if you go to the top, you have your 48, you have your 405,000. Those are our internal salaries. People are still with Isle Wight. Then if you come further down under the line, 1.3 million, that's paying Chartwell's. That 65,000 for repairs and maintenance was an arbitrary number that I'm using to match, to get that if you look towards the bottom, total expenditures, for the total expenditures, 2,077,000 to equal the total revenues. Because if the sales don't come in, and we don't get that 2,077,000, and we have to reduce our expenditures, where will we reduce? That 65,000, we will not do those repairs. I'm not doing a single repair until January or February-ish, when I can look at sales to make sure the numbers are coming in. And yes, in fact, we have the 65,000 to do it with. I don't want to do all these repairs to the tune of 65,000, only to find out in March or April the sales didn't come in. Now we can't make the payroll within this fund.
Right.
So that's,
And we haven't renegotiated our contract with them for next year. But if you remember when we first did it, they had skin in the game of $100,000.
Yeah.
So if we did have this loss, they had to write us a check. This year, we had 60,000 built in. And so we haven't met with them to finalize that, but they'll have skin in the game as well. And over the years, like I said, once we get to the point where we're running and we know year after year we're having a profit, then that fee will go away. But for now, they have skin in the game too, which I think is fair. And as we work towards developing a good, strong partnership.
Ready? Okay. And we're on the grant categories.
I mean, that's just money coming in. I love it. Love a grant.
Yeah, we usually don't have a lot of questions with this.
I mean, please send the check.
Are we ready to move on? Does anybody have any questions with the grant?
Those are pretty consistent, and we pay some salaries to there, we pay pretty much the same salaries. And you guys approve every year the actual application.
The one thing we do see is our needs, like special ed. Special ed, our needs are going up. As our needs go up, does that affect the money we get for grants, or is that just, this is what you get for the number, for the size district we are?
It's based off of the number that we pull on December 1.
Okay.
And I have, for example, last year we were at 744. This year the number is going to be 770. So it has gone up. So that should bring in a little bit more money on that.
But we're hiring more people
We have
in
to
sped
hire
too.
more people because the number is increasing. It's putting a kind of a, it puts us in a situation where you need classes more.
there's also other areas that coincide with your special education, Medicaid. So the more special ed we have a Medicaid reimbursement where we log every time, help me out, the IEP team.
Correct. Anytime a student is receiving services that could be billed for, so for example, speech pathology, we do bill for speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy. We're actually in the talks to maybe start to bill for psychology. There are certain things that we're able to do to receive money from. I believe when I talked to Casey last, even in the closure, she was at 177,000 coming in from Medicaid last year. And if we add psychology this year, we would be at another 30,000 or so there. So we're able to do a lot with our Medicaid to bring some money in. And that goes to the general fund, that doesn't count to
Right.
our department.
Right.
So,
Right.
Those are some of those other fees. But I will say, she mentioned Casey. If you guys remember a few years back, we were barely getting any revenue.
do
through
remember that.
Medicaid. And then we hired
Hired
her
her.
full-time to do
Uh-huh.
it. And you see, it's really paying off. She does a really nice job.
Very simple. If a family is on Medicaid, and we log that this child received these services, this child went to an IEP team, this child received speech, quarterly we put that in, and then we get reimbursement on a certain percentage.
And salaries as well.
So,
And on
yeah.
salaries, right. So it's $170,000, right?
It's a lot of paperwork and a lot of time, but it's worth,
Yeah,
it's worth doing.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
We were missing out on some funds,
We
weren't
really
we?
were.
Potentially, yeah.
That's it.
We're looking on page 17, the adult literacy basic ed. How are we doing on that? Do you know about, I mean, this is just it really doesn't have a lot to do with budget, but just how many students are we serving? Do you know about how many we're serving?
I don't, but we could report that to the board next
That
time.
would be good to know.
We've done a lot of different work in there. I know Ms. Ford has done some different work with different adult populations and even welding. We could do a report on that.
That would be good
I
information.
think we've definitely expanded. It's not a huge number that we serve, but I think we do get a good return on investment with the little money we do get from the state. So, yeah.
Okay. Next is, we've already done health. Does anybody have additional questions on the health?
No, I think you covered all that.
So we're on the last one.
Next, we're on the last page with capital maintenance fund.
Expenditures.
You've already, Dr. Thornton's talked about this and why is, so, I mean,
Well, I just want to compliment the staff on their organization skills.
Yeah, this was
Like, this is my
very,
second time around being on the board, but it's, before we had to flip through, go back. And I like the tabs, you know,
Very
thank
good.
you very much.
I like the tab.
That was easy.
That was
Okay.
very nice.
Good,
The only
thank
thing
you.
I ask is that the next time it's printed, print it
I
bigger
know.
so I can see it.
The large print version.
magnifying glass.
thought that might be a
saw you over
problem.
there.
It's,
She
yeah,
needs the large
will do.
print.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. They were smart.
You can send it to Trish. You know how to do that, yes. We could do that, actually.
There you go.
That's right. We
I'll
have the
take the regular-
capability.
I'd rather have it on one page, so I liked it.
Oh,
I'll just do it for Julia. Julia's gonna have the big book.
She needs the large
That's
print.
all right.
And I want to just compliment you on your explanation
you.
throughout
Yes.
this whole process.
I enjoy
Could
this.
understand.
And coming in from Pennsylvania, right? Is that right?
New Jersey.
New Jersey?
Jersey.
Okay, New
Jersey.
Jersey. Coming here and learning the new Virginia, versus New Jersey versus Virginia. This has been, your explanation was very thorough, and I appreciate that.
The education, the topics are they're the same. So I appreciate that, though. Thank you.
The hardest thing is just learning the local government.
Yeah.
Because federal is the same, and state doesn't deviate too far.
I had a book of the line accounts, and I tuck it under my pillow.
I would still like to note that I would like to see a reading specialist and a math specialist in this budget written, at least one, even though I feel like we're probably gonna need more. I would like to see that as one of the positions that we are looking for actively, because I don't see a way where we don't need those positions.
So
Just don't
we'll
see it.
probably be in a much better position at even the next meeting to share some of that.
Okay.
And I know Susan can actually share some of the data we have right now, and it may be surprising to you, but we still think this is too preliminary of data, and we would really want to see more later in the spring. Our main purpose was to show you, with that 2.1, you can feel comfortable. We don't need to add those positions in our regular operating budget. We can pay for them over 2 years with our CARES fund. That was our main purpose. But I do think it's some information that I received actually from the state level data, actually some national data through NWEA and some state and national data through STAR, which we use. Would you like to share that, Susan?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So some of the data is actually hot off the press, like I literally just got it. So we're busy trying to crunch numbers from some of our mid-year testing that we did, and looking at our beginning of year testing, looking at last year how we did. And so we have some bad news and some not so bad news, I think, really. Our K2 data is looking pretty rough for reading and math. And we're talking, could be close to 70% of our students needing intervention in K2. And that's statewide. We're seeing, that's a trend that we're seeing for K2. So that data is a little frightening. And when you look at that, if you look at one interventionist that person's going to see 40 to 45 kids in a day. So we couldn't even keep up. We would need so many interventionists that I don't even think we could even feasibly hire that many. So what we're going to have to do, and this is our focus, is it has to be tier one. It has to be what is happening in the classroom with the classroom teacher. The numbers are too high to think that we're going to fix this through a pull-out program. It won't work. It's too many.
Right.
The numbers look better in like 4th and 5th grade. They look better for reading. Math is looking a little worse when you look at the upper grades.
Right.
So we have a varying amount of data. Now, keep in mind that the data should be interpreted with caution, and I say that for a couple of reasons. One is some of the data the tests were done at home. So our PALS data was done remotely in some cases, and the state says, we really advise you, be very cautious how you interpret that. Some of the STAR data, it's done at home. And you know what happens sometimes when you're at home and your child is struggling and you want to help your child. Right, so we are cautious of how we interpret the data. In some cases, parents did bring kids into the school and we tested some of our virtual students. But we need to be very cautious how we look at all of our data, I think. Good news, we are, today's our first day with K-5 students back 5 days a week. That should help our data. It should start improving. So when we do our next round of testing, which will be in April, hopefully we'll get a better handle on these numbers with the kids being in the building. So it's still really in flux right now, and so it's hard to say exactly, but the K2 is our biggest concern right now.
Susan, I was thinking about this since we met last Thursday. And, you say K2. And I see that your original plan was your 10 IA positions. And if we had, and we currently have many reading specialists. We've got Haley Cooprider, who's constantly working. K2 instruction is not rocket science, but it is understanding the best strategies, and they can be taught to our IAs.
Yes, that's exactly right, Ms. Carr.
So I can see a lot of value there. We've got the reading specialist we have in place, and I know Haley Cooprider and the benefits she has brought. I've heard people talk about her support.
Yes.
So I can see how you were thinking. I also see, what you're saying too. And it's a hard decision.
Yes.
But I definitely see where getting data, talking to teachers, talking to administrators, this is such that we need to come together as an Wight County division and talk this through, not just shoot money here and make decisions now. We got to look at where we are and what we got to do to get to where we got to go. And I don't think that is a decision that's going to come so quickly. It's like really digging in and seeing what has happened and where we need to go, what we need to do. It's not going to be an easy fit, but Wight County isn't out there by themselves. I think we're probably at a much better place than what many surrounding divisions where they are right now. So while we have good news, bad news, and some good news, I think that we can still be very proud of what the work that we've done and where we are. It's just we got to keep rolling up our sleeves and keep working, and it's not going to be easy, but
It's going to be a good combination of things. Like, we already have targeted students in Tier 3 that we're pulling out. We're going to continue to pull those out. They probably have larger gaps. And then those IAs, not only can they be taught keeping those kids in the classroom, breaking them up in smaller groups, it also helps the teacher manage those kids and get more done. So we're looking at that. And then I think the piece of additional math and or reading specialists will be when we say, okay, here's who we normally with our normal staff can handle. And we think this next group has probably fallen enough behind where we need to do more than just a regular classroom. But we do want to be cautious, even with our tier 3 kids, that we don't say, okay, you got further behind, so we're going to pull you out double. That's not good for a child either. And so weigh in all of those, and we do, Susan and Mike discuss this with all of their teams to come with a good decision. But we feel like we're going to have a combination of all of it.
And I will say, as an elementary school teacher, I hated my kids to leave my
Yes.
classroom.
That's right.
Exactly.
I did.
That's right.
I was very, I don't know, possessive.
Right.
But I wanted them in there with me.
That's right.
See, as an elementary school parent right now, if my kid needs additional assistance, I want them getting that additional
Yeah,
assistance.
but that additional assistance can't come into the classroom.
It's hard when there's 20-something kids in a classroom, though, to get one-on-one or even 3-on-1 attention on a regular basis at the level they might need. And so, I mean, we don't have any math specialists in the county. Math teachers are hard to get in general, and we're not even putting anything out there to try to get them when everybody is going to be looking for these people. Reading, math, especially at elementary level, is going to be like the hot thing coming up in September or this summer, and we are not even looking right now. I feel, I feel like we need to be at least looking. At least have those positions open. If we find the right people, great. If we don't, we don't. But I feel like we need to be looking because we know we need help in these areas.
Yeah.
And in some of the schools, Hardy, the class sizes is roughly 17. Yeah, it's a lot easier to have that one-on-one in a classroom instruction. Carsville classes range from 15 to 20. It's a lot easier when you have 24 kids in a classroom, which is the norm for Carrollton when we're in session. It is a lot harder for those teachers to have that time. And so maybe I'm advocating for the district at resolving because I know what that district looks like. But they've already asked for an additional reading specialist in prior budgets. And so they're already asking this before the pandemic. So after the pandemic, this is going to be a need. So my problem is, okay, I think training IAs to do it in classroom, great. But you're going to have the students who are so far behind that they're going to need to be pulled out. And I understand nobody wants their kids to leave, but as a parent, if my child needs, their instruction to me is more important than their social.
I'm not talking in
class, but
social.
like-
That didn't enter my mind when I'm talking
But
about
I mean, they
what
need to, if
said.
my kid needs to be pulled out, pull him out, get him where he needs to be, and then he'll be in the general classroom flow. Like, get him there, you know what I mean? Or get her there. Like,
And sometimes pull out does, that is something we do. Because
we already do
absolutely, I
that.
know we do.
it does work, but
30
not,
minutes.
it's not the all fix is what we're
No,
saying
I'm not
too.
saying that either, but what I'm saying is we're not looking for these people at all. And if we continue to keep waiting, it's just gonna be harder to find these people.
Well, I'm thinking like this. It's just like September. It's just like you decide, hey, I want to build me a home. And I'm going to start building my home in September. Why should I go hire a shelf, housekeeping staff now, and my house is not built? We don't know what we need until the students come back. And I'm hoping, just like Susan said, that the classroom teachers will be capable of catching the students up, because it's not just going to be one child because they have been out for a month or so. She's going to have a whole classroom, or he or she going to have a whole classroom full of kids that will probably need that same assistance. And with the instructional assistants in there, they should be able to, instead of taking that child or children completely out of class, can pull them over to the side, work with them in a smaller group, and catch them back up, individually, daily. Because I can't see us putting funding in this budget for positions that we don't even know if we're going to need.
We know we need them. We know we have issues with
Not
math and
necessarily. We know the students are going to come back, yes. And I'm hoping that a lot of, and actually, Wight County is way ahead of a lot of, I'm just dealing with Hampton Roads now, the larger school districts, because day one, we gave the parents a choice, and our students came back in September in person. Some of these larger school systems, they're just getting there because the governor suggested. And they're struggling now to try to get these kids back in person. So I am proud of what we have done as a team. an educational team for the students in Isle of Wight County. And I'm thinking, we have a lot of parents in Isle of Wight County. Yes, I know our parents can get these kids from pre-K through 6th grade at least, okay? Now, maybe some of the parents don't know a lot of these high school subjects, you know, because some of us probably have to go back and do refresher courses on some of the high school subjects. But for the elementary kids, I think they're going to come back in a good place, okay? And just like I said, just like Susan said and Dr. Thornton, today is #1 for 5 days. They are ahead. Now, the students that parents opt to keep them virtual, there could be some concerns, but I'm hoping it should not be a lot of concerns, because a lot of those parents, because they opt to keep them virtual, they're staying on top of things as far as their instructions, and they're making sure they're doing their Zooms and everything else. Those are those parents. Now, we have a few parents out there where the kids, sure, probably been on summer vacation since last March, but it's only a few, meaning very small portion, you know, there. And I don't think we're going to have a major concern where we need to be hiring a whole lot of people and putting that in the budget. If we see that there is a concern, I'm hoping we have enough staff there, and we have a few extras in the budget that we may be able to hire 1 or 2 staffs as needed. We're going to be getting CARES funds from the federal government. Once that come down, we can use some of those CARES funds to hire temporary staff to help catch those kids up that need that, because that's why those funds are coming down. But for us to write it in our budget today, I really don't see that there is a need right now, because we are anticipating, we're saying, oh, I'm going to have major problems before we evaluate it.
I know we've had schools that who have requested extra reading specialists before the pandemic.
Well, have
so
they?
Before, at least Carrollton, at a minimum Carrollton. And so before the pandemic, they needed an additional reading specialist. I do not see how after they're not going to need it. We know we're having issues with mathematics. I mean, even if we have one that floats between a couple of schools a couple of days a week, I just feel like we should be looking for these people.
Well, we discussed that last Thursday. Carrollton Elementary, I'm positive. Carrollton Elementary is going to be getting that extra that they asked, and Carsville as well, because I asked Susan about it, if the Carsville was due to enrollment or really a need, and you answered that question. And Carrollton is going to, because they addressed that as far as what they requested last year. That has been addressed.
An
But
IA
you're
is not a
asking
reading
for-
specialist.
But you're asking
There's a
for more?
difference. I'm saying an IA is not a reading specialist.
Well, we could, I mean, you know.
You can train them to help with reading, but they are not a reading specialist. It's very different.
Well, okay.
If I could
I was going to ask you to.
So, one, the reading specialist at Carrollton is in the budget because it was in last
Right,
year's budget.
That's what I thought.
We
It's in
didn't
the
fund
budget.
it. So it's not an addition that we highlighted, but Bob knows that he has an additional reading specialist, and Carrollton knows. And I think I'd go back to what Ms. Carr said. Just like anything we do, right now, people are panicking
Yeah.
because of the pandemic. They see their own child lost or whatever it may be. But I think you need to go back to everything we do is a team of people. Yeah. Jim Thornton does not come and say, we're going to have 10 people in this. It's the instructional team with Mike, Susan, teachers, guidance counselors, reading specialists, special ed directors sitting and brainstorming a plan once they have the data to say this is what we need. And that's what we'll come to the board with. This is what we need. And I do see some merit in, yes, we're putting out, I know Cheryl's putting out a lot of we're putting out a lot of positions that we know are there. And even these that this budget's not finalized, we are putting out, probably for the first time, potential openings. Even though you haven't officially voted on it, the Board of Supervisors haven't funded it, we need to get out there. So that point is well taken. So we'll probably put, as we get closer to our decision, and we'll be presenting more to you each month, we'll probably put those out there so that we do not miss out on people. But we're not ready today to say we're going to need 4 reading specialists or 3 math people. But as we know, we're rock solid with what we think we need. We are going to advertise this. So
Well,
I
I
think
think-
that helps.
Ms. Ulick makes a good point on the math, because we've always had reading specialists in early, in the early childhood, but we've never had that math person. And if we see that math is something that we need help on, not just in early elementary, but it's following them on through, we may need to talk more about that and having someone that can be that person to train or whatever, help our schools with those huge gaps. And I wanted to ask about GG Math. Have we evaluated that, the effectiveness of that? Is it something we've seen that has been working?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good point, and it's probably a good time to look at doing that when we are talking about other programs and stuff. But overall, if you use it, yes, it does work. I think where we run into our issues is the consistency, and doing it for that required amount of time each week is where we run into the issue. But if you do it and you do it consistently like they tell you to, yes, it is going to work. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a good time to look at everything we're doing. And I think, when we meet as a team, we keep saying an intentional plan. Like, I think you kind of, if you just keep throwing this, that, and other, that is not going to work. We know we're going to have a large number of students who need help. So what is going to be our intentional plan to help a large number of students who have not met the benchmark for math or reading? Where do we go? And trying to balance that with a child who needs to be in a classroom to get grade level instruction, but also, Ms. Hulick, your point, needs to be caught up to where they can, be successful in that grade level. So it really is a balancing act, and there's no perfect answer. I mean, you know that. And we're talking with our colleagues from around the region. Everyone is grappling with this. What is the best way to remediate the kids who are going to have significant learning loss?
And I'll say one more thing. Before the pandemic, what were we dealing with in our early elementary?
Yes.
It was behavior. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I mean, behavior that stopped instruction.
Yep.
We have to have additional hands, trained hands, because if you stop instruction, we're going to have even more gaps that are going to creep in, more than what they are. So we may find that we need more than 10 IA positions to support. We don't know the behaviors that are going to be coming back when all of our kids, there's so many unknowns that are there that we're going to have to do more of. What do we have? Where are we, and where are we going to go with this? A strategic plan in place with what we have.
Yes.
I'll make a suggestion, my last one. I just was listening to you, and you were telling me about your professional educational team, and you come together and how you all make decisions. Do you have your special ed director or coordinator in part of that team? Great, because that's how they're trained. What you're going to be seeing when the students come back in the normal setting is what the SPED teachers have been trained to deal with. And they could be very helpful with some of the regular classroom teachers in helping them how to deal with students on different levels, okay? Because SPED teachers, that's their training all day long. They could have 10 kids in a class and everybody's different. Different level for every subject, and they can deal with it. So they could be very helpful, in your planning.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Yeah, okay. Well, with that, our meeting is adjourned.